Just over 7 years ago, I got my second pet lizard, if you don't count all the green anoles I caught as a child, and she's a blue-tongued skink. But Alex, you ask, what kind of blue-tongued skink is she? So I actually bought her from a reptile show, which I ended up selling it years later, which is how I realized that many of the people selling there are terrible people and should not get your money. One of those sellers are the ones that I bought Olive from, because little old me didn't know the difference between wild caught and captive bred. I just had this optimistic view and was like, all these sellers are great and they've all bred these animals themselves. So I bought what I was thinking was a captive bred blue-tongued skink for a crisp $80. When I told everyone I got a captive bred blue tongue for $80, they were like, that's impossible. I was like, what do you mean? I went to this show and I gave them $80. They gave me the skink. Was it captive bred? No. She was clearly wild caught. I didn't realize it at first, which meant a few things. First off, I had no idea if anything was wrong with her, and I had no idea how old she is. I think she's the exact same size as the first video with her from 7 years ago. I was like, oh, I can't wait to see how big she gets. Like, she's gonna grow so much. Nope, she's the exact same size. Now, whether that means that I bought her as an adult or if she was just stunted, the world may never know. I have no idea how long she will live either. I've had her for 7, so that means, I don't know, she was probably at least 8 or 9, but she could be much older. She's still breathing though, so that's good. So her being wild caught means that she was living somewhere in Asia, living her best life, and then some man came along, stuffed her in a bag, and sold her to somebody in the United States for between $5 and $10, shipped her there, and then that wholesale import person sold it to the local shop for probably like 15 bucks, and then they made a crisp like 60 bucks off of me, and she's got to live the rest of her life in boxes. Speaking of boxes that she lived in, she originally lived in a 40-gallon with aspen chips, more specifically lizard litter by Zilla. Nothing against lizard litter in particular, I just probably shouldn't have been using it for a blue-tongued skink, which would prefer at least the slightest bit of humidity. I gave her some dog food brand. I don't even know what brand. I still use dog foods for blue-tongued skinks, but not that one. That one smelled atrocious and was probably 60% horse, 20% human. She seemed to like it though. She got her fruits and her veggies, and I was gonna say she developed quite well, but she hasn't grown at all. So she's lived on it. I don't know, she seems healthy to me. She has some physical issues, including a few missing toes, which she had as I purchased her, which, yes, that could have just been the previous owner, or the seller, I guess. I'm so used to saying previous owner, but actually a seller this time. Might have just not been giving her the humidity that she needed, and she lost her toes during shedding, but she does have a few other abnormalities, including part of her, like, I guess it's not her lip, but her top jaw. One of her scales are deformed. So every time she's on cocoa fiber, it gets like stuffed in her mouth. So when I moved houses with her, I just temporarily had her on paper towel, but she actually does a lot better on paper towel, which it sucks because now she can't really burrow. So it's this toss-up. So constantly this deformity with her scale. You can see it in old videos. People actually thought it was mouth rot. And if it kept getting full and I wasn't cleaning it out, it's possible it could have caused some issues, because I literally have to go in and scrape out her scale gap with like tweezers and get this dirt out, because it would cake up and fill her mouth. But on paper towel, it doesn't happen. Her face looks much healthier not having this dirt stuffed in her. But then on the flip side, of course, she's just stuck having a bunch of hides instead of actually being able to burrow the way a blue tongue would. So it's kind of a toss-up. I'm actually going to move her to the dubia.com enclosure, and I'll figure out some sort of substrate. I guess I could do cypress mulch or something as like an in-between. And speaking of diet, I wasn't talking about diet. Olive likes bugs from dubia.com. Sponsor of this video. And speaking of what she eats, this video is sponsored by the bugs that she likes. Dubia.com has literally been the place that Olive has been eating insects from for over 7 years. It's been a great way to really figure out what she likes, the variety that she enjoys. I would say her favorite's hornworms, but she's had every single species of insect that they sell, which is a pretty massive variety. Just a couple days ago, I just got a little shipment. I just needed some extra bugs. Other times I do a massive shipment with like 5 different species of all different sizes. It's a really nice and easy site where you can just go and see a full layout of everything. For example, obviously they sell dubias, and you can pick the exact size down to the 1/4 inch. So if you have, say, a leopard gecko and a blue tongue and a beardy, you can get 3 different sizes of insects and they'll be perfectly sorted to the size that you want. And you get the luxury of options at a very nice price, and it's so much easier than having to breed myself or go to the store and overpay, or going to sites that just don't have the same selection or reliability. I always know the bugs are going to arrive within a couple days, and in the few times that I have had issues, because after all, you're shipping living things who, yes, they're just going to die after when you give them to your animal, but you still want them to arrive alive, and in those couple times I've had issues, they're very quickly to resolve them. So it's just a complete stress-free way of getting my bugs into my lizard's tum-tum. So if you want 15% off your Dubia order, you can use code GoHerping at Dubia.com. But yeah, the seller, I actually went to their brick and mortar store later to be like, oh, I wonder if they'll have anything else. And oh my, what a store it was. It was my realization that somehow local exotic pet shops are actually worse than chain shops. If you gave me $100 and told me, there's a gun to my head, I have to go buy a reptile from a store right now, I'm going to go to Petco and buy one. I'd literally rather go to any Petco or PetSmart chain than a local exotic pet store. And somehow this one wasn't even nearly the worst I've been to. It was the kind of store that would have a 40-gallon enclosure with 20 Savannah monitors in it that they're selling to people that think they're buying bearded iguana dragon lizards, because every lizard is the same and takes the same husbandry, which is a lamp and bugs sometimes. One time I went in there just to look at their selection. I was actually considering buying one of these Savannah monitors. I was looking at the Savannah monitor and a guy came in. He was clearly high off of his mind and he wanted to buy a ball python. I think he thought it was a reticulated boa, I think is what he said, or something, which doesn't exist. But the owner was like, that's great, yeah, you'll love it, yeah, it's like, it's on sale, we'll give you a discount. And he was explaining the story while he was like wobbling back and forth. He literally just like wandered off the street. He was like, oh, I think I'll take one of your reticulated bows. And she was like, that's great, do you want to pay cash or card? And he was like, yeah. And he was telling a story about how he used to have a reticulated boa python and it kept getting out of the enclosure. He'd sit on top of the enclosure and it would still just climb right out. And yep, they sold him a ball reticulated python boa. It was one of my many inspirations to vet people when selling my own animals. So hey, he did something good. Shout out. Very drunk man. But the store went out of business and they ended up selling, like breeding some sort of dog and selling them on Facebook Marketplace. So yeah, I'm sure they used my $80 well. I definitely did get a bang from a buck though, because Olive is, I mean, she's cool. Also, by the way, I used to name animals on how they looked as a kid. I would be like, orange, its name is Goldie. Red, its name is Reddy. I don't know. Olive, it turns out I didn't know what olives looked like because I thought that she was olive colored. She's not olive colored at all. But that's her name. She's learned it for 7 years. I can't change it now. Just kidding. She has no idea what her name is. Neither does your reptile. When I was a kid, I would always make a list of these different animals that I was kind of considering, and blue tongues were always pretty high on the list. So when I went to Repticon, there were actually only 3 blue tongue skinks at the entire show. One was Olive, and then the others were actually captive bred, healthy. I think they were northern blue tongue skinks, and the cheapest was like $350, which I did not have. And I hate to admit this, Olive was actually my second choice of blue tongue because I only had about $100 at the time. Actually, I think, now that I think of it, you know what would be funny is because I've sold blue tongues that looked exactly like the one that I wanted. I feel like it was like a caramel blue tongue skink or a caramel northern blue tongue is the one that I really want. And I've actually sold that's funny. I wonder what the odds are that the one I got was that one. Probably close to 0%, but it would be funny. And now that I've had many types of blue tongues, I've had northerns, I've had easterns, Irian Jayas that come in and get shipped off. No, I'm actually quite happy with Olive. Maybe I'm saying this because I have had Olive the longest, but she feels a bit more personal to me, but maybe I just have gotten to know her a little better. She's always been easy to handle. She's kind of a grumpy personality. She huffs quite a bit. She sneezes a lot, which if any animal's sneezing, is probably a bad sign. But I can now confirm, after 7 years of sneezing, she just sneezes a lot. She's never had an RI or any really severe problems other than the deformity in her mouth that gets like stuff stuck in it. I'm honestly impressed I never got infected because I didn't know what to do as a kid, but she made it through. But yeah, respiratory and lung-wise and everything else, she's always been clear. I literally just heard her sneeze. She's on the floor right now, and she just sneezed again. At one point, I was like, I wonder if it's the substrate. substrate, which maybe it was, she was on dry aspen, but then even as I used more damp substrates, and even now, as I've experimented with literally just paper towel and almost doing the leopard gecko sort of thing where they have a humid area, but not actually a fully humid enclosure. Turns out it's not dust, it's not any aerosols or anything, and I've never had that with any other lizard. I have had blue-tongued skinks. They seem to sneeze a bit more than other lizards, but feel free to fill me in, because I always thought that was a bizarre quirk that concerned me, but could never find anything wrong with her. Now that I think of it, have I ever sexed Olive? I don't think so. Because yeah, you could be like, well, she's small, she's probably a female, but she could also be a stunted male, and I've been lied to this whole time. I have literally never sexed Olive. I think I'm just gonna choose not to, and live in blissful ignorance. She was 142 grams when I got her, or when I made my first video on her. Man, I'm looking rough in this video. It's a bit underexposed. What was I doing? Actually, now that I remember, so in this original video, I'm wearing a shirt. It's called it says Festival, which is a festival I used to do in the summer. Not really, it was in the fall. And Olive was one of those animals that I would bring along. I would kind of, like pre-Emerald Scales, I would kind of do, people thought I was a non-profit, and I actually did accept donations at these shows, but I was actually just pocketing the money for good. I'd use the money towards future festivals and on videos, and I would bring animals, and people could hold them, and that was not the best idea, but not the worst. I mean, Olive has probably been held by well over 100 people. I've brought snakes that have probably been held by like 500 different people, which is kind of cool. A little bit of liability, I guess, because some of them could have gotten bit, especially the kids that were like, ooh, noodle. And I actually did have some amphibians die because I think a child had something poisonous on their hands, and they touched my toads, which I wasn't letting anyone touch the toads, but this kid just started getting their grubby little hands. I don't know if my guess is it was like bug spray or sunscreen or something, and my toads died. So after that, I stopped bringing animals to festivals. But Olive made it through those festivals, and she got to see a lot of faces. The funny thing is, these were local festivals, so people assumed that she was a local species. Same with, I would bring snakes of different morphs that were obviously captive bred, and they would be like, I think I've seen one of those in my backyard. That's a copperhead, isn't it? They say to my lizard. No, they didn't say that about Olive, but yeah, people thought that every animal I brought was wild caught, and so everyone would go like looking for blue-tongued skinks in their North Carolinian backyard. Yeah, didn't have the heart to tell them they're not there. No, I told them. Nobody listened. Olive has always hated vegetables, which has been kind of a pain. I almost just mix fruit juice with it. Like, not like store-bought fruit juice, but just like she likes strawberries and blueberries, so I just squish them on the veggies, and that'll get her to eat some collards or some dandelion greens. But overall, she admittedly has a very high protein diet. The dog foods do help, which again, I don't even want to recommend what dog foods to buy, because I honestly don't buy it. Alice buys it because she usually does the lizard care, so don't ask me. But she's alive. Actually, wait, I have a video called Getting Picky Blue Tongues to Eat. I have no memory of making this. I guess I need to watch my own video then. Yeah, Olive, she's the same size. She's the exact same size. Maybe she's grown like half an inch over the past 7 years. But yeah, that's Olive, and she was one of the first reptiles I got getting into the reptile keeping community. While I don't consider myself a blue-tongued skink fan, because honestly I never even felt attached to other blue tongues that came in and went out, it's been cool to have one and experience quite a bit with her. She's been through most of the channel, and she's been in quite a few videos. But that's her. So if I could go back, I do want to say I wouldn't have bought her again because of the seller and being wild caught, and there could have been issues like parasites and ticks and mites and diseases, but ultimately it kind of worked out, and I don't really want to change the trajectory of things that have gone. So if I could go back, you know what? Yes, I would give that terrible seller my $80 for a wild caught blue tongue that was taken from her just natural habitat, chilling as a little baby. I'd do it again. And thanks again to Dubia.com for sponsoring a lot of recent videos. I've been here and you've been enjoying your your reptiles have been enjoying their bugs. They're not for human consumption. But thanks, Dubia. It's 15% off with code GoHerping. But that'll be it for this video. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.